You know, something strange happens when you reach a certain age. The future stops feeling long, and the past starts feeling very close. I'm 82 years old, and some evenings I sit by the window of this quiet house and think about the choices that shaped my life. If someone had told me the truth about success when I was young, maybe I would have lived differently. Because I spent 40 years chasing money, believing it would give me everything. And now I finally understand what it actually gave me. My name is Thomas Caldwell. I grew up in a small town outside Dayton, Ohio, in the late 1950s. When people say they grew up poor, it can mean many things. For us, it meant the electricity sometimes got shut off in the winter. It meant my mother carefully cutting coupons at the kitchen table, while my father tried to stretch his paycheck a little further each month. My dad worked at an auto parts factory, 12-hour shifts most days. By the time he got home, his shoulders looked like they carried the weight of the entire building. One night when I was about 10 years old, I woke up to the sound of my parents talking quietly in the kitchen. I sat halfway down the stairs listening. My mother said she didn't know how they were going to cover the heating bill that month. My father sighed in a way I had never heard before. It wasn't anger, it was exhaustion. That moment stayed with me. And right there, sitting on those cold wooden steps, I made a promise to myself. I told myself I would never live like that. I would make money, real money, enough that my family would never sit around a kitchen table worrying about bills in the dark. That promise followed me everywhere. By the time I turned 22, I had moved to Chicago with one suitcase and $100 saved from odd jobs. The city felt enormous compared to the quiet streets of my hometown. Skyscrapers everywhere. People moving fast like time itself was chasing them. I landed a job as a junior sales associate at a manufacturing company. At first I struggled, but something about the pressure woke something up inside me. When you grow up watching your parents struggle, failure doesn't feel like an option. So I worked harder than anyone around me. I arrived before everyone else and stayed long after the office lights had started turning off. Slowly the effort paid off. My sales numbers climbed and my commissions got bigger. Within a few years I was earning more than my father had ever made in his life. I still remember the day I bought my first brand new car, a silver Chevrolet sedan. I sat behind the wheel in the dealership parking lot, staring at the dashboard for a moment. My hands were shaking. It felt like proof that I had escaped the life I grew up in. But here's something nobody warns you about success. The moment you reach one goal, another one appears. The car became normal. Then I wanted a better apartment, then a promotion, then my own company, more clients, bigger deals, more revenue. It became a cycle that never seemed to slow down. When I was 29, I met a woman named Melissa Grant at a friend's 4th of July party in Evanston. She had this warm energy that made everyone around her relax. She worked as a librarian and loved quiet things like old books and morning coffee on the porch. We started dating, and a year later we got married. On the day of our wedding, she held my hands and said something simple. "Tom, promise me one thing. No matter how busy life gets, promise me you'll always make time for us." And I said yes. Back then I believed I meant it. But here's the mistake I didn't realize I was making. I thought providing for my family was the same thing as being present for them. I thought long hours at the office were proof of love. so I worked. And I worked even harder once our children were born. Our son Andrew came first. Then 3 years later, our daughter Sophie arrived. I loved those kids more than anything. But love isn't measured by how hard you work for someone. It's measured by whether you're actually there. Melissa would ask if I could come home early for dinner, and I'd say, "Give me 20 minutes." 20 minutes would turn into 2 hours. Andrew had baseball games on Saturday mornings, and I'd tell him I would try to make it. Sometimes I did, but most of the time business meetings got in the way. Sophie once had a school play where she had a big speaking role. She had practiced her lines for weeks, and I promised her I'd be in the audience. Instead, I was sitting in an airport lounge waiting for a delayed flight to Dallas. At the time, I believed my family understood, but children don't complain the way adults do. A few years ago, Andrew said something to me that still echoes in my mind. We were sitting on the back patio after dinner when he said, "Dad, when I was 12, I used to practice pitching every evening, hoping you'd come outside and watch." I asked him if I ever did. He looked down for a moment and said quietly, "No, I didn't remember those evenings at all." By my mid-40s, my business had grown into a successful manufacturing company with dozens of employees. From the outside, my life looked like the American dream. Big house in the suburbs and 2 cars in the driveway. Although many of those vacations included me working on a laptop while everyone else was at the beach. Friends would visit and say, "Tom, you've really made it." But something inside the house had slowly started changing. Melissa never yelled and she never gave ultimatums. She simply became quieter over time. The laughter that once filled our kitchen faded into polite conversations. One evening I came home late like usual. Melissa was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring out the window into the backyard. I said hello and waited for her usual smile. But when she looked at me, there was something in her eyes I had never seen before. Nothing. We tried counseling after that and truly tried to rebuild what had been lost. Melissa passed away when she was 71, a sudden stroke. At her funeral, people stood up and shared stories about her kindness, about how she always listened when someone needed help. And I sat there realizing something that broke my heart. I had spent more than 30 years living with this woman, and there were entire parts of her life I never took the time to understand. I had spent decades chasing financial success, while the person closest to me slowly became a stranger. Now I'm 82 years old. The company I built still runs successfully. The house is paid off and the bank account is comfortable. But the house is very quiet these days. Andrew lives in Arizona now, and Sophie moved to North Carolina years ago. They both have families of their own and visit when they can. But time doesn't wait for us to catch up. Childhood happens once. Here's the truth I wish someone had told me when I was young. Money can buy comfort, and it can buy security, but it cannot buy back a single moment of time. Your children won't remember the expensive gifts you bought them. Your partner won't remember how many hours you worked. If you're watching this and telling yourself you'll slow down once things settle down at work, please hear me. Life rarely settles. There will always be another project and another reason to stay late at the office. But the people who love you only get one lifetime with you. Some evenings I sit here by the window watching the sun go down and I think about the trades I would make. I would trade every dollar I earned for one more quiet dinner with Melissa. One more baseball game standing beside Andrew. Just once. So if this story made you stop and think about your own life for a moment, then maybe sharing it was worth it. Because the greatest wealth in life isn't found in bank accounts or business deals. It's found in the moments you choose to be present with the people who matter most. If stories like this remind you what truly matters, Consider liking the video and subscribing, because sometimes the lessons that change our lives are the ones we hear just before it's too late.